Hi everyone. In this video, I will be covering validations in TracerPlus Desktop, how to configure them, and just general basic validation configuration questions that you may have. So to get started, I just have a sample application here with 10 blank fields. I haven't configured anything in here yet. And I'm looking at the validation tab for field 1 in this case. So in this example, let's say we want field 1 to have a maximum value of 3 in that field. So what we can do is we can set a min-max validation for value, and we'll set it to 3 here. One other thing that we should probably do in this case, because this is going to be a value validation, is switch our field type of field 1 from general to number. And that's just going to make sure that they can only ever put numbers into that field, which should make the validation work a little bit better. And so we'll just call this field here, we'll call it value validate. And then likewise for field 2, what we can do in this case is we can do another validation based off of length. So in this case, we'll call this one length validate. And what we can do is we'll set it to length here, and we'll set a min length of 3 as well. And basically, that's just going to say don't allow the user to submit anything in that field that's longer than 3 characters in length. And then just for a final example of validation, let's do a validation between 2 different fields. So in that case, what we'll have to do is we'll have to use 2 fields, one to hold the value that we want to validate against, and then one to actually perform the validation. So first, let's create that field to hold the value. So I'm just going to call this test value. And this field's just going to hold our value that we're validating against, which in this case I guess we'll just call test. Now we'll make field 4 the actual field where we're validating against that test value. So we can call this one test validate. And we'll just go to the validation tab here, and we'll just set a equals to the test value field. And again, that's just basically saying only allow a submit if the value in this field is equal to the value in the test value field. And so we're not going to use the rest of these fields, so we'll just remove those. Go to the form designer and just create our default form here, and then I will deploy that to the device so we can take a look at how these things work on the device itself. Okay, so now that it's deployed, let's pull up our device and enter our validate session here. And so kind of what I'm going to demonstrate here is I'm first going to put in a record that will satisfy all these validations, and then we can go back through them one at a time to kind of determine how they work. So for our value validate, I believe it was a max value validation of 3. So if we put in a value of 2 here, that should be satisfied. For our length validation, it was a min length validation of 3. So let's put in 4 characters here. And then our test validate field was just a straight up validation against the test value field. So we just need to duplicate that value in this field. And so if everything is set up correctly at this point, when I hit the submit button, it should submit the record without any problems, which it looks like it did. So now let's go back through these one at a time and trigger each validation individually. So to start, I'm just going to put the same data that we just had in these fields again, and then for the value validate, what I'm going to do is I'm going to purposely trip this one. So this one was a max of 3. So let's put in a 6 and try to submit and see what happens. So you'll notice we get the max value error here. Keep in mind these error messages are customizable in that same validation tab that we configured these validations before. So if you wanted to change whatever that was, you could do that. And so we'll switch that back to our value of 2. For our length validation, it needed to be a length of 3. So we'll bump that down to a length of 2. And you'll notice we get the length validate message there. And then for the test validate field, this needed to be the same value that was in the test value field. So if we change that and try to submit that, it's going to fail that validation as well.